Most people say getting married is a financial trap, and it is for most people. Which is why when my wife and I got married, we sat down and we decided to implement 5 monthly habits that literally doubled our investment portfolio from $100,000 to $200,000 in the last 2 years. That's what I want to talk about to you today. And so if you have a significant other and both of you care about building wealth, getting out of debt, and becoming financially free, then pay attention because this video is all about that. I actually had the $100,000 in my bank account in the investment portfolio sitting there for many years before meeting my wife. And I also had the savings rate to contribute to that portfolio. So it didn't make sense that for so many years it would just stay at $100,000. And so the problem was, after saving the money, not right away, but it would be years later, literally a year and a half later, when I would look at a guru online and be like, you know what, I can make money from his course. And I would buy his course and obviously not make money with it. And I would make these dumb investment decisions, like buying GameStop, that would literally ruin the portfolio. And so it wasn't until talking to my wife and sitting down and being like, all right, what can we actually be certain about? We can be certain about a long-term return on the market. We can be certain that we need X amount of money when we retire. For us, that was $3.5 million. And to do that, we need to save $2,000 every single month, assuming an average 7 to 8% return on the S&P 500. Okay, that's settled. What was important though was not the $2,000 saved. What was important was the $2,000 saved at a specific time, because that would allow the money to compound. And so my wife and I sat down and said, you know what? It's not about chasing the 50% returns, 15, 20, 25% returns, doubling your money. It's about long-term consistent returns. It's about controllable certain returns. So I wanted certainty. From that moment forward, my wife and I sat down and said, the money that is going into the portfolio, the $2,000 a month, will never come out until we retire. That became a non-negotiable. Just doing that doubled my investment portfolio from $100,000 to $200,000 in the last 2 years. And the second thing that we did was to just invest in ETFs. And so the reason was because when I first met my wife before we got married, I sat down and I looked at a stock called Alibaba. It's like the Chinese Amazon. Back then, Chinese Amazon, Alibaba, had a high of $320 and it dropped to $120. And I was like, man, there's no way that such a large drop made sense. And so I was like, this is it. Like, this is my ticket to retire. This is my golden opportunity. I hit like telling this story just irks me a little. And so I put $100,000 into the stock. Quite a bit of money, right, of what I had back then. It was selling part of the portfolio plus saving more money from my previous job and funneling it all in, and then the stock promptly dropped to around $70 to $80 a share. And it wasn't until recently, literally a few months ago, when the stock went back up to like 140 and I decided to sell a large part of it, that I could face my portfolio again, you know what I mean? But throughout this process, I had around a year when I just couldn't look at the portfolio, you know what I mean? And so I stopped caring about the portfolio. I stopped paying attention because every time I looked at it, I felt bad because it had gone down so much. I was like down 40%. But you know what's funny? It's the moment I started checking my net worth again, this is the second monthly habit, is to check net worth and investments regularly every single month. The moment I started checking, I started caring. And the moment I started caring, I started saving more. And the moment I started actually saving more, I started thinking about the actual good investments that I can put into the stock market, right? And now I invest in ETFs mostly. I still have some Alibaba, don't get me wrong, but I guess it's a hedge against America, that's all. And you know what that did was I started thinking about investments. I started paying attention to the markets. I started doing research on different ETFs. I started a keystone habit that created a bunch of other little habits, right? You know that feeling when you start going to the gym and you make it a weekly thing, but then throughout the week, you're thinking about not making your time at the gym totally worthless, and so you're thinking about how you can eat better, how you can sleep better, and eventually you're building a healthier version of yourself? Yes, that's what I did. That's what checking your money and your net worth and your bank accounts do for you financially. It will improve your financial health over time because it will motivate you to make a bunch of other decisions that also make sense financially. Third habit. This was man, about a year ago, my son was born, right? And that was the moment when we realized that $2,000 a month wasn't enough to sustain our life anymore. Like having a child is expensive, yeah? And so that was when we decided to up our spending from $2,000 to $3,000 a month. And granted, these were spending targets. And so the reason was because we kept going above $2,000 a month ever since our son was born. And so we had to sit down and think about, okay, are we still able to meet our savings goals of $2,000 a month, even as we up our spending target from $2,000 to $3,000? The answer was a resounding yes, because we weren't spending that much money before. And so every month I will ask my wife how much money we spent, and we will sit down and think about whether the money spent was spent in areas that were worthwhile. And we both decided that, spending money on our son is worthwhile. And so we review our spending monthly, regularly, right? Like, for example, this last month, we spent around $2,500. And my wife was like, you know what the most amount of money we spent was on? And I was like, what? And she was like, eating out. Like me, because I wanted to go out with my wife on dates like once or twice a week. And we would drop like $100 to $200 on multiple meals and little accessories that we would buy, right? That was the most amount of money we spent. And so then we sat down and we were like, okay, then we'll go out once a week, right? From this point forward, we'll go out once a week. And then any other time that we decide to go out, we'll eat cheaply, right? We'll spend less than 100. And it's not about just spending less money. It's about figuring out the kind of life you want to live with your significant other that would keep both of you still happy. You know what I mean? So like instead of, we have to spend less than $50 today, it's more of like, would you be okay with like a walk in the park? Let's explore a new park every single week and like check it out. And we're both down, and it turns out to be a cheaper endeavor that's still fun, right? So don't think about how to spend less money. Think about activities that both you and your wife or husband would enjoy that inherently cost less money. Fourth thing that I also do with my wife on a regular basis, this happens at least once a month, is we talk about our goals and we talk about money together. And not just about money. I mean, we probably talk half an hour to an hour every single night about just like random things in life. But it's important to not just talk about the money. It's important to talk about emotional well-being, physical well-being, because all of that ties back to how much money we're spending, right? If we're mentally not well, we need to spend money on a therapist. If we're unhealthy, we need to go to the doctor. That's all cash, right? And so having conversations about where we're going in our lives, how we are doing right now, whether we feel like we're on track, right? Whether we are living our best lives given the resources that we have, and listening to each other is something that's really helpful for building wealth and being on the same page. So for example, like celebrating wins with my wife, like with this YouTube channel, net worth milestones and spending achievements, all that builds momentum because it feels like you're going after a kind of life that both of you want together. Fifth thing that I do on a monthly basis, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. I have a personal finance YouTube channel, but I still don't really know how credit card statements work. Let me clarify. There was one time when I was in my former years, probably like throughout university, I had a credit card and I was spending money on the credit card and I had forgotten to pay my credit card bill. And next thing you know, the bank slaps me with additional interest charge. And I got scared. I was like, oh my God, like this is so much money that I didn't even spend this money on anything. It was like a 20-something% charge. I was like, oh my God. And from that, I paid it, right, because I had the money. I just forgot to pay it. But from that moment forward, at the end of every single month, I would log onto my bank account, look at the limit, right? Like, for example, my credit card has a $3,500 limit because I never needed more than $3,500. And then I would look at the amount of credit remaining, so like $3,000, and then I would just pay the difference. At the end of every single month, that's what I would do. So I didn't even have to ever read credit card statements. I don't understand what minimum, like I understand theoretically what minimum payments do, but if you ask me to like describe it, like what would happen if you paid after the due date, before the due date, I am unconcerned at all with any of that. And there are times when I just buy something and I am so forgetful and I'm cognizant of that. I log onto my bank account right away and I just pay the credit card bill. And every time I round up, right? Like if my credit card shows that I have transactions totaling 492, I just put 500 in there. Yeah, because I am unconcerned. I just don't want anything to be late. And so I pay as soon as I get it. Yeah, I pay all bills as soon as I get them. And I pay my credit card bills either at the end of every month, because credit card bills are usually due at like the first week of the next month. And so I pay at the end of every single month, or just as I remember it throughout the week, because I don't like the idea of me owing other people money staying on my mind. That's all. And so what do these 5 monthly habits mean for you? I think it means you and your wife sitting together, or husband, having a conversation about the kind of life you want to live in the future and the kind of life you'd be willing to live today in order to get to that future. I think it's about sitting down and crunching the numbers a little to understand how much more money you need to save, how much more money you need to make if you're able to realistically reach your goals. If so, great. If not, what can we do about that? And then I think it's about never getting into debt, like bad consumer debt. Like, don't swipe your credit card and go on vacation because you think the next paycheck will be able to cover your credit card bill, right? Just have an emergency fund so you're not breaking your savings patterns, okay? So it's about things like that, are little by themselves, but when combined together will transform your financial lives. And so if you found this helpful, like and subscribe, and let's go on that wealth building journey together.